Hey, welcome back to the shop. Today we're going to be talking about drying wood for stabilizing or casting. So both of those are very dependent upon starting with a piece of wood that has zero moisture content, basically. So I'm just going to kind of walk through and share how I make sure that the wood that I'm using in my casting resins or prior to stabilizing start with 0% moisture content. It's pretty easy, there's not a lot to it, but there are a couple things that you need to make sure you're doing and you'll be getting good results. So let's get to it. So the first thing that I do when I get wood, either out when I'm hiking or if I buy burl blocks or something like that, I usually just kind of let it sit for about 2 weeks in the shop and let it kind of acclimate. I try to cut it into smaller pieces so that the acclimation hurries up. Generally, I'm in a pretty dry climate in Nevada, so most things that I bring in here into the shop are going to be wetter than this environment. So I first just kind of let it sit for a little bit and dry it out as much as possible to kind of get it to equilibrium moisture content, which I think typically is around 12% in my shop. Once it's acclimated a little bit, and this doesn't really count for green wood. Green wood is a totally different thing, and it may take a lot longer. If you just bring home a stump that you just cut the tree down, that is going to take a lot longer to dry out, and I would definitely recommend cutting it up. But you have to watch out because green wood, if you accelerate the drying process, will crack and warp. If that's what you're going for, no big deal. But if you're trying to keep it intact, you got to be kind of careful with green wood. Now, once it's acclimated, the next step is you want to get it into smaller sizes. This could be a duck call, that'd be a good one. But if you're shooting for pen blanks, cut it into 1 inch by 1 inch squares and about the same length that you need. Don't try and dry out a giant plank of wood. Get it close to whatever the final blank is going to be. A little bit oversized though. All right, so once you've gotten the pieces cut into their sizes that you need, then the next step is to bake it. Now you can use any oven that you have. I don't know that I'd really use your house oven. You're probably going to get in trouble by your significant other, and it may smell a little bit. So don't do that, but most people use a little toaster ovens. Those work fine. Whatever it is, just make sure you get an oven thermometer and make sure you can keep an eye on the temperature for this stuff. But the temperature you're shooting for is a little bit over 212 degrees Fahrenheit. That's the boiling point of water, and so if you can get up above that, it should make it evaporate a lot quicker than just putting it in there at 100 degrees or something like that. So 212, I actually usually just go for like 220 and just give it enough, definitely over the boiling point. One thing you have to keep in mind is that a bigger piece of wood, it's going to take a little bit longer for it to heat up to 212 on the inner core, and that's where most of the moisture is. So I usually just go 220, 225, especially when I'm doing larger chunks like this. It's not going to hurt the wood at all, but it'll make sure that you got it over that boiling point. All right, so the big question is, how long does it take, or how do you know when they're done or dry? For small pieces like these little sagebrush branch things and like pine cones, for the most part, 24 hours in the oven and they're dry for sure. So, and that's the majority of stuff that I do. So I leave it in overnight and I'm usually good to go. Now, for larger chunks like these pieces of maple burl that I have, it's going to take longer, especially for something, the bigger the piece of wood, the farther the moisture needs to go to get out, basically. So it's going to take a little bit longer for larger chunks. Now, how do you know when they're done? Now, you can't use a moisture meter because anything below 5% or so, and those things are pretty much worthless. So there's a trick or another way to do it. So what you're going to do is before you put it in the oven, you're going to weigh each piece of wood. And let's say you're going to dry out these 3. I would number them, and I would weigh each piece and keep a logbook. And so let's say this is number 1. I'd weigh it, mark down its weight, and I want to be using an accurate scale here. I would go with grams and get an accurate measurement of the weight before you put it in the oven. Do that for each piece, and then I would probably, especially for larger pieces, I would just give it 24 hours. Go back in there, pull out number 1, weigh it, mark that down, put it back in the oven. Do that for 2 and 3. Then maybe give it 4 or 5 hours and check and see if it keeps losing weight. basically what you're looking for is when it stops losing weight, all the moisture's out of it. Now, the thing is, you might have to kind of check it a few times. And, you know, like I said, 24 hours, you know this thing's not going to be dry within 24 hours. So check it after 24. I'd maybe give it another day, then check the weight on this one. Some of the smaller stuff, you might start checking them more, you know, half a day or 4 hours or something like that between. It'll be up to you, but basically, like I said, once it stops losing weight, you're good to go. It's at 0% moisture content. You'll know that the stabilizing you'll get it as stabilized as it can be, or you won't have any issues with casting it in resin like Alumilite. So overall, the process is pretty simple. There's not a whole lot to it. Bake it until it's dry, basically. So, but the weighing thing, that is going to give you the most accurate measurement of, you know, is it dry or not. So I hope this was helpful. If you have any comments or questions, you can leave those down below. If you're new to my channel, I do all kinds of things that involve, you know, resin casting mostly, and turning blanks and all kinds of things like that. So if you're into that, subscribe and you'll get notified of new videos when they come out. You can check me out on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. I kind of post about what I'm up to in the shop weekly and daily there. So anyway, I hope this was helpful, and I will see you in the next video. Thanks for watching.